Welcome. In this session, let us look into writing a very simple test with behave BDD. So simple doesn't mean easy, but this one's actually going to be very easy for us. And also we will see how to run this behave test from our Visual Studio Code console. Okay, the IDE which I have opened in here. So for running the behave or BDD test from VS Code, we need to install an extension. I will show you which extension to install and how to actually run that. So let us go ahead with that. So I have already created a folder, and this is the folder behave BDD project. You see here Python workspace and behave BDD project, and I also have my virtual env folder created and the requirements.txt using the pip freeze. Okay. Now let me copy this path in here and let us go to our Visual Studio Code. I have to take this folder into our Visual Studio Code and start writing our test files or the behave related files in this folder itself, and this is going to be our project folder. So let's minimize this one, and in our VS Code, let us actually open folder option. You should see if you don't have any folders or any projects imported in your VS Code, or else you can also do from file also, and you can select this option open folder in here. Okay, so let's click on open folder, and let us actually paste the path where our project is and click select folder, and you should see your project in here, behave BDD project, and we have got our files also, the virtual environment folder and the requirements.txt file. Okay, now let us actually try to create a behave test in this folder itself. So for that we have to create a folder and actually a couple of folders and files. Okay, so let's actually go to the behaves documentation. Now this is the behaves official documentation, behave.readthedocs.io en/latest and tutorial. From here we are going to take the first test in here, so that anybody who wants to follow, they can actually do the same thing and just copy it and we'll paste it there. And this has got a lot of other documentations in here, in case whenever if you are stuck with anything, you can probably come here and refer this documentation also. So that's why even I wanted to tell you this tutorial about behave. Okay, so from this tutorial we are going to use the first test and put it in our VS Code. If you are fully new to BDD and behave, might not get some of these things, but for now just go ahead and follow on this with this lecture session and try to just create these files and try to run it. Okay, so for writing our test, we need to create a folder or a directory called features, and inside that features we also need a folder called steps. So let us actually go to our VS Code and try to first create those folders. So let me minimize this one, and in our behave BDD project, so let us select this behave BDD project, and in the second option, new folder, let us create a folder named features. Okay, and inside these features we are also going to need another folder or a directory called steps. So let us also create that. So again, new folder, and with this features folder selected, and click on this new folder, and we will create this folder called steps. Okay, so we have to create a folder structures features with steps. So let us go back to our documentation again. In this documentation, here is our feature file. Okay, so tutorial.feature. So let me actually just copy this whole thing. Right click and copy this one and go back to our VS Code. And in the features folder, we will create a file. New file option is here. So file and tutorial.feature. Okay, tutorial.feature, and let me actually paste it here. And let us actually make the indentation proper for this, given, when, then. Okay, let me first complete with this steps folder, steps definition Python file. So click on this steps, and we will create a file inside steps folder, but looks like this is not going in the proper place. So I should be writing this tutorial inside, keeping this tutorial.feature inside the features folder. So let me pull it inside the features folder. Are you sure you want to move tutorial.feature into features? Move, and my tutorial.feature should be inside the features folder, and steps folder also should be inside the features folder. Okay, so you need to take care of these things while working with behave BDD. Okay, click on this steps folder and click on new file, and here what we will do is we Since this is a step definition file, we can actually follow a standard of writing these Python files. Okay, this is going to be a Python file. So since this is a steps Python file, steps definition file, we will put the steps word in the name. So steps underscore tutorial dot py. Okay, so it's a good practice to follow this naming convention, steps underscore tutorial, so that you know what is this Python file about. It can be some utils files also, right? So that's why it is better to name it tutorial underscore steps or steps underscore tutorial. Also, this is one of the requirement for our extension while working with this VS Code. But for behave, it is not a requirement. You can just directly name it as tutorial.py. You don't need to name steps underscore py. But for working with the extension, which I'm going to show you in a minute, this you need to have something called steps underscore tutorial or tutorial underscore steps, something like that. So steps underscore tutorial. And let's go to our documentation again. And let us actually copy this whole thing, this Python code, selected and copy. Let's minimize this one. So yeah, okay. So before that, in this directory, create a file called tutorial.py. Okay. So behave does not mandate us to put the steps word in the Python module file. But for the extension, you need it. I'm just trying to, probably I'm telling you for the second or the third time, but just so that you know. So let's minimize this and come back to the steps underscore tutorial file and paste the whole code here. And now our steps definition file is also complete and our tutorial.feature file is also complete. Okay, so I can run this now, but I would like to show you the extension which is actually enabling us to run this feature file. So let's go to our extension here, extension, and okay, so looks like I have not yet installed the extension. So let us actually search that extension, behave VSC. Behave VSC is the extension here. You can see here, behave VSC. So this is the extension which is required for us to run our behave code in our Visual Studio Code editor. Okay, and this, you can go through this if you want to. For example, with this extension, you can do a two-way step navigation. So here you see the definition, two-way step navigation. So once you are in the feature file, you can press the F12 key in your keyboard and it will directly take you to the step definition file, meaning the Python file. So once you have many numbers of feature files and many number of steps definition file, it will be tough to find, right? So this plugin or this extension is going to help you in doing that. Okay. Also, this has got other good stuffs like syntax highlighting, auto formatting, auto completion, and other things. Run parallel, also run and debug behave test, directly run your test from your behave file, and you can run it directly from this Visual Studio Code console. You don't need to go to command prompt and run. So all these things are there with this extension. So if you want, you can go through this. But one thing in here is you need to set the Python path for your workspace. I will also show you now how to do that. So this is actually mentioning that you can set your Python extension file. So our Python is our virtual environment, right? Not our system's Python. So I'll show you how to set that in your workspace. And also this documentation has got some more descriptions about how to create your folder structure and all. See here, features, and then inside features you have the step definitions files and other test and other feature files you have provided here. So by the way, some of this whatever is mentioned here is not a hard requirement for behave, but for this working with this extension, you might need to do that. Okay, so I need to install this one. So install, and the release version is not working. So you can actually install the install pre-release version, and looks like it got installed. So let me actually refresh this. Let me actually remove this. Now our behave VSC extension is already installed for this Visual Studio Code. So let us actually go to the settings, extension settings. This is the settings for this extension. So you can click on this settings button and there is an extension setting, and you can see there are 6 settings options which are provided. So you can go through that documentation and change it as per your need, but most of the times you don't need to change anything in here. So behave is quite helpful in that you can, if you want different options and all, you can run it from the command line in case if you want to. So let's close this one, and there is one Python setting which I wanted to show you. So let's go to this Python extension, and again this settings for this Python. You can click on the settings button and go to the extension settings for this Python, and See, there are two settings in here for this Python. So one is the user and one is the workspace. Okay, in the user Python settings, there is something called the default interpreter path. So this one is using the systems Python. So I don't need to provide the path. Okay. Now, for example, if you have multiple Pythons in your system and you want to use some specific Python version out of the multiple that you have in your system, then you can provide the path in here. Now I have only one Python in here, so I don't need to provide the path in here. Okay, so that option is there. And this is for the user level. User level means for this VS Code, and whenever you work on this VS Code for any project, it is going to use this Python, your default interpreter path, whatever you provide in here. But for this workspace or for this BDD project now in this editor, Visual Studio Code editor, we can set it in the workspace option. In the workspace option, there is another default interpreter path. This is for this workspace. So I will not use the systems Python. Rather, I will be using the Python virtual environment Python. Let's go to our folder system. And in the folder system, we have our VSCode. We have the scripts and we have this python.exe, right? This is what we are going to use. So let me actually copy this whole thing. Copy and minimize this. Go back to our VS Studio Code and we'll paste it here. And we will put Python exe. Okay. So this is the setting which you need to do to set to your virtual environment path, virtual environment Python for this project. And you have to set it in the workspace option for the Python extension. Okay. So let me actually close this. All our settings are done now. So also we can close this one and we are in our tutorial.feature. Okay. So let's go to our Explorer in VS Code. And so after setting that, you will see this option in here, .VS Code, and you can see the settings.json here. So from here also you can change it in case if you want to do that. So let me close this one. And so let us try to run this test in here. So this option, right, provided this option of running click to run test. This is provided by the extension behave VSC extension. So I can run it directly from here. So if I click on this option, so it is going to run this test and looks like it already ran. And you can see here it got passed in here. So test item, run a simple test. Run a simple test is our test. You see this is the name in here. And if you want to run the full feature, for example, I have only one scenario here, test scenario here. If you have multiple test scenario and all, you can also run it directly from this option. Click to run test. So it's running the test in here and it got passed. And you can also see the output in here, which we will walk through later in a different session. For now, you can see that all our tests, one feature passed, one scenario passed, and 3 steps passed. Okay, so everything looks to be good in here. So by the way, when you are first time writing a test and all, you might probably see a play button in here. This is a tick mark. That means I have already run this test. You might probably see a play button in here first time you are writing a test. So just take note of that and don't be confused like you are seeing something in the demo and you are seeing something when you are writing your test. So that's about it. I have shown you how to write your first test in the Visual Studio Code and about the extension, Behave VSC extension. And also we have seen how to set workspace Python and how to run your feature file for your Behave project. Okay. So optionally, one thing which I forgot to mention is that you can go to your browser and you can go to this Behave VSC extension. This is the URL for that. And if you might have already seen this while we were installing it, but this is the full documentation in here. You can also see it in your browser. And in case if you have trouble finding this plugin, going to this URL, so you can just type Behave VSC and you can Google it. So let me actually search for Behave VSC, search Google, and you can actually see here the first organic link here, Behave VSC, and you click on this and you should see all the extensions, this Behave VSC extensions documentation in here. From here also you can go through this and in case if ever you need. So I just wanted to show you that. So that's all in this session. Thank you and we'll see you in the next one.